One of my favorite things in Call of Dragons is that every single season we find new builds pop up while some builds get more and more refined. So, in today's video, we're going to be discussing the current best builds for the current meta marches primaries for SOB2 while we min max every single thing we do and try to stay ahead of the competition. What's up guys, Meower here back with a brand new Call of Dragons video. So of course season SOB2 has begun for almost a week and you know the usual, with every new season comes brand new builds, comes updated builds, and comes build that we all know and love. So of course before we get started, be sure to drop the like, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get started. This time, however, unlike other times, I will be taking a different approach because I don't want too many clutters or too many builds that we don't really see any play into. So for the purpose of this video, I will be only discussing the meta primary commanders for each and every March. So if you notice that your commander is not on this list or is not in this video, that doesn't mean that they're not really viable. It just means that the builds for them are not really refined and I don't really have any experience building them, so I don't want to give any bad advice. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Starting off, we're going to be starting with the superstar of archers, Syndrion. So Syndrion has had a different tree for a while, which was full precision, but it seems like there is a new build making its way. Now, this build, while it looks completely trolly and it looks completely unorthodox, I've actually fought against it and I tried it, and let me just say, this build gives really good results. Like it's performing much better than the full precision build. I don't know why, but it works, I guess. Big shout out to Zergoth for finding it. But here's how the build goes: you go for attack, march speed, HP. You go for arrow precision, and then you go through the precision tree. First, you pick up precision, you pick up attack, adrenaline rush. Strength and weaponry, and then you pick up whirlwind, and then you pick up cool under pressure, 2 points on intrepid, and then you go for the marksman tree. You go for attack, rage generation, you go for extra skill damage, you go for bullseye. One thing though, you can substitute the extra skill damage for alert, it's up to you. And then you go for marksman HP and you go for delight. Now, the reason why this you go for this build is that it increases the rage cycling of Syndrion's main skill, making it have a much higher uptime or almost zero downtime whatsoever, and also ensuring Fregar's crit is always active as well, and you're consistently dealing that extra 800 damage factor plus the extra 400 from Syndrome's awakened skill. Now, that is it for the build. Of course, the old good old reliable precision build is there, but since this video is just updating all the builds on what I think will be the current meta, we will not be showcasing the other precision build. Um, as for rallies, oh yeah, there's been a new rally build right now, so let me just showcase it. You go for this, you go for this, and then you go for the rally tree, you go for the extra attack, you go for the extra normal attack, and then you go for fair offense. And then you go ahead right into the precision tree, you go for adrenaline rush, you go for strength and weaponry, you go for whirlwind, you go for cool under pressure, you go for intrepid, go for unstoppable, go for mark of war, and the last point, you can put it in wherever you want. Me, personally, I'll just put it here into suppression for the extra chance to inflict fragility. Now that is it for the Syndrion builds right now. Fregar should never be a primary, and if you do, just build whatever you want on her. She'll not really be viable anyways, so yeah. As for Goresh, his build has been relatively the same since last season. Nothing much has changed. You still go for the standard overall attack, march speed, extra HP, go for shield of stability, you get egoism, you get Heaven's Blessing to improve Goresh's healing, you go for cool-headed, you go for all conquering, the extra counter attack, you go for encouraging dance, and now you have an option either through Iron Will or through Ready for Battle. I've been trying out Ready for Battle. I've been seeing some decent results because when I play infantry, I get swarmed anyways, so my race cycling is almost 100% uptime, so no struggles there. And then you double dip into flank protection, you go for the extra skill damage, you go for the extra march speed, and then the last 2 points go into rectification. Next up, Maggrat. Now, Maggrat has been has pretty much exploded onto the scene like the Green Goblin, no pun intended. She's probably one of the strongest commanders right now in terms of full on DPS. I made a video about her the other day where we tested her versus so many other situations, and she's pretty strong. Like, she's really strong. She surprised me a lot. I did not expect her to be this strong. Like, I thought she would be okay, but I didn't expect her to be just this broken. But, anyways, the build has been pretty much the same. I think we've cracked the perfect build for now till we find something else. One thing that you could change, either you could go for Whirlwind or you can go for Invincible. Personally, I'm thinking of kneeling into Invincible for the extra 8% hero attack and normal attack damage, which in turn will improve Maggrat's big AoE nuke, or sorry, her big auto nuke. So I think this build will outshine the one I posted before. Next up, Zyra. Zyra should never be a primary. I tried her out so many times. Guys, a rule of thumb that you need to keep in mind: if an archer commander does not have precision, it should never be primary, and if a mage hero does not have the skill tree, it should never be primary. So, that being said, Zyra sadly will not have a build. She's just too weak as a primary without the precision tree. Goresh, Skogul, there is a new mobility build. Personally, I never used it, so I'm not gonna comment on it. I think it's a troll build. From what I've seen, that build just you're just way too squishy and sacrifice too many stuff at one makes Goresh Skogul OP. But anyways, moving on. As for Liliya, nothing much has changed in her build. It's the same exact from last season. I think this is like the perfect mage build. You can substitute the extra Mars speed for the extra rage generation if you like more rage generation. Me personally, I love Mars speed, so I won't be sacrificing anything. So nothing has changed. You still go all the way onto the skill tree, and then you go to the magic tree, and the final point goes into steady hands. Next up, Bertie Boy, same concept. Nothing much has changed for him. I like going into full on steady hands instead of Raging Tide because you can always proc it every single time as it's off cooldown, improving Bert's damage and Tohar's damage. But of course, to each their own. If you want another variation, you can always just switch it up and go for the extra crit damage instead of steady hands. Next up, Velyn. Velyn should never be a primary. Like I said, a mage commander without skill tree is like you walking around without any pants in public. It just doesn't work. Unless you're into that, then of course he's the tree anyways. I've been leaning more into Autumn Rains now, since big shout out to Amon X who discovered that you can take away the seasonal talents from people with stuff like Autumn Rains and Dagger of Betrayal. Tohar should never be primary, and this should never be primary. Nico can also utilize the full on rage cycling build because Nico is an archer caster, so I think it would work perfectly with him with the extra rage generation from Head Hell High and the extra rage accumulation speed boost from the light. Other than that, it's almost the same exact thing as Syndrion, with the only difference being you don't take Intrepid, you take the extra 2 March speed. Next up, Kinnara. She still goes, control tree as well. You can always run Autumn Rains if you want it, but with that new Nico build, I feel like Nico is now the better alternative to Kinnara as well. The same for Hosk. Hosk, you pretty much just go the same build as Nico, and you can also switch it up for the counterattack build if you don't use the what do you call it, the long range warfare. You can always just go for this build. It's a bit tanky. It's our good old friend of the counterattack build. You go for this. You go for the extra march speed. You go for the counterattack. You go for whirlwind. You go for cool under pressure, intrepid, unstoppable, mark of war, and then you double dip into the extra head hell high for the extra rage generation. You go for force of will. You go for either suppression or irrepressible. We're gonna go for irrepressible, and then the good 2 points go into suppression. That is it for the Hosk counterattack build. Hosk is slowly falling off now with the introduction of long range warfare, plus the two new archers. He's sort of struggling to find his footing in place. We'll probably find a new use for our hunky Minotaur man. Next up, Garwood should not be used as primary. Nika should not be used as primary. Forondil could be used as primary. I think his build is relatively the same. Nothing much has changed. Control tree into PvP gives him everything that he needs from a lot of march speed, a lot of damage, and a lot of CC. Next up, Theodore, pretty much the same build as Bakshi. If you are not going to put him as your garrison build, he's not really that viable in the open field, unlike Bakshi. He's tanky, but Bakshi is equally tanky in the open field, but does more damage. However, if you want to use him for the open field, you can just follow this build. Go for attack, go for march speed, go for HP, you go for mighty power, you go for skill tree, of course, because skill tree is the best tree in the game. Go for head held high, you go for boiling blood because all of the cavalry commanders deal a lot of skill damage. You go for focus, you go for raging tide, you go for caged animal, and then you go for the cavalry tree. You go for cavalry attack, and of course you go for intimidation, and finally perfect ferocity. And the last point you just put into steady hands for that extra chance to gain more rage cycling. As for the epic commanders, I think they've kind of fallen off completely. No, they just don't have any use anymore, so I just feel like they're completely useless. So I feel like that's everything for the current meta and the current builds and everything that you should be using. I honestly feel like a lot of the commanders that are not mentioned or don't have a build should not really be used as primary at all. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Feel free to discuss. Join the Discord, the link is in the description. I would love to have a conversation with you all. Have a wonderful day. Meow meow.